it blows my mind how terrible on paper that Kansas City's defense looks, and just how sometimes they are completely unstoppable on defense.
It it really is. It's Spags blitzes. That's all it is. It's Spags blitzes. It's his blitzes. He just know when to dial them up. I don't know how they got away so long with having such a, I guess, mediocre, not mediocre secondary, but I mean, so much is riding on the secondary considering, the NFL throws the ball an absorbent amount of times.
Like
And,
that
go ahead.
secondary just looks like butt cheeks, and I'm like, how do they consistently win Super Bowls?
because of their offense. It's so high
Teams go,
powered.
Yeah, like it's night and day. It's night and day.
this is a triple coverage fantasy podcast. My name is Bradley. I'm one of three hosts. I'm going to go ahead and pass the ball off to our other host.
What's up? What's up, guys? It's Eric, one of three hosts as well, and we're gonna toss it on over to Zach.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Thanks for paying in and getting us the views that we need. Looking forward to this season.
All right. Thank you, fellas. Now, today is going to be a very exciting episode. Reason being, by the time our viewers see this, it is going to be the official week leading into kickoff of NFL season. And what that means for us is the official kickoff of fantasy football season. Now, what we're going to do for you guys today, we're not telling you what to do. We're going to tell you what we plan on doing with our starting lineup. Now, each of us is going to go through our lineup for one of our favorite leagues, and we're going to go ahead and see who we should be starting, who we shouldn't start, and what that finalized roster is going to look like. Now, I'm going to toss it back to Eric. Pause. Reason being is Eric has the elongated roster. So, Eric, we're going to start from the top. Quarterbacks, who's on the roster, and where do you plan on going for week one?
All right, so just a little backstory for this league. So this is a dynasty league. Keep
Okay.
forever. I don't really like trading in this league because I don't want to say reasons. I have friends that listen to this podcast that are in that league. But um, it's an IDP league. It is a lot of players. I will say that. I basically have a scout team. Like I was telling the guys off air, Belichick doesn't have a job because he's too busy scouting for my fantasy team for me. But all right, so I have won this league, and then I blew this team up because I wanted to get younger because I had so many old players.
Okay.
So it is a lot of youth and a lot of question marks. But for quarterback, my starting quarterback is Tua Tagovailoa. I feel
Okay.
like in a dynasty league, he's young. He's still got those weapons. We talked about it on the first pod. He's got Hill, he's got Waddle. It's hard to beat that.
Right. And
Um,
A Chain
A
and
Chain,
Mostert,
Mostert.
they're going to catch some passes too
Yep.
out of the backfield, I'm sure. So that's a great start at
I
quarterback.
have two bench quarterbacks because I'm not sure where to roll with it on bye weeks. Somebody dropped Deshaun Watson in the offseason, so I picked him up just to see what he's got
Mm-hmm.
going on in the tank, if there's anything left for him in Cleveland. And then my homer pick, I have Bryce Young.
Not bad. Not bad.
If he can establish himself as an actual quarterback with good weapons, they fixed the offensive line. Um, Hopefully, this is going to be the year that Bryce shows that he was worthy of that number one pick. We'll see.
Okay.
Moving on to the next position, I have wide receiver. My four starting wide receivers are Devonte Smith, Chris Godwin, Michael Pittman Jr., and Keon Coleman.
Okay. I like that.
Yeah, I'd be super stoked to have those wide receivers. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I love Devonte. I know he's 1B, but 1,000 yards last year, 7 touchdowns, 112 targets. Hard to you know beat that kind of
Right.
production on a great team at that. Um, Chris Godwin is pretty much just like Mike Evans to me. He is the picture of consistency. He got
Yes.
83 receptions last year, 1,024 yards, 2 touchdowns. The touchdowns dipped, and I did not like that at all. But he still got 1,000 yards and 83 catches in a PPR league. It's hard to beat. And then Michael
Okay.
Pittman, 109 receptions,
Fight on.
1,152 yards. Hey, fight on. And 4 touchdowns. I do think his production dips a little bit this year with the guy that I will be talking about in just a second. But I still think another 1,000 yard season could be in the works, but I don't think he's going to get 109 catches. My bench wide receivers are Jamison Williams, Jacoby Myers, John Mechie III, and Adonai Mitchell. Um, like I said, my team is young. Most of those players have 3 years in the league max, except for Chris Godwin. He's been there for a hot minute, but you know, I need the veteran presence in my locker room.
I feel like honestly, man, with Dynasty, that's what you want to do, right? You want to
Yeah,
build upon
exactly.
the youth, and so I think that dude, I'm super high on this year's rookie class,
Same.
like
Me too.
all of them. So it's, dude, I think you're stacked at wide receiver.
I wanted Xavier Worthy more than Keon Coleman, but he went the pick right before me, so I was mad. At running back, this is where it gets a little dicey.
Oh.
I have Josh Jacobs, Isaiah
Okay.
Pacheco,
Not bad.
and Ramondre
Oh. Okay.
Stevenson as my 3 starters, with Zamir White and Brian Robinson Jr. as the bench players.
Okay. So Eric, let me ask you this: what's dicey about that?
I'm curious of Jacobs' production when it comes playoff time, and when I say playoff time, I mean fantasy playoff time, because I believe, like we talked about on the last podcast, Josh has never been somewhere where it's cold, and Green Bay is cold, cold.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'm curious to see if that's going to affect him much, because if he's playing in Lambeau, they're outside. It could be negative 15 degrees. How's he going to run in that weather? How's he going to run in snow? How's he going to run in sleet? We haven't really seen that. So I'm
No.
curious.
Okay. That's a legit concern. Especially you got to remember last year, AFC, I believe it was wild card or opening weekend. Tyreek Hill got shut
Down.
down in Kansas City,
Yep.
and it was extremely cold that game. So that is a legit concern.
And
Yeah, 100%.
and with Ramondre, our team is probably not the best, but I think he is going to get some good carries. But I mean,
Okay.
he only got 800. I say only. He only got like 800 all-purpose yards last year. Now, granted,
And
that
he was injured.
he was,
He was
he
injured too.
was, he was. Um, I don't know. I loved the pick 2 years ago. I don't love the pick now. And then Zeus, I mean, he's behind a terrible offensive line with a terrible offense minus Devontae Adams. It worries me a little bit. And then B Rob, he's splitting time with the name escapes me right now.
Eckler.
Eckler, yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
Eckler can't stay healthy sometimes, so it could end up being a win-win situation or a lose-lose situation if Eckler is healthy. So I don't know. I'm dicey about my running backs.
Well, I'll say this, and this is just my opinion. I think Eckler is on the downside of his career, more so him being a mentor to Brian Robinson Jr. as he's getting ready to ascend as a running back. So I feel good about Brian Robinson Jr., especially with Daniels there. He's going to see more dynamic throws, and you're also going to see some great runs. So not bad, not bad in the running back room. Not bad in the running back
I
room.
like it. I like it. Zach, what's your thoughts?
Again, man, like with your roster being as young as it is, I don't mind necessarily certain teams being poor now.
Mm.
when you could have somebody like Zeus in a couple of years they're going to beef up the line, they're going to get a better quarterback, he's going to be okay. Um, from what it sounds like, you're right there in the middle, which is what I hate in Dynasty. You're like right there at I could win or I could get that first round pick, right? So it's just kind of like what's going to happen this season. But I think you're stacked at wide receiver enough to where you could trade for a running back if you wanted to. I mean, I wouldn't push off of Jacobs or Pacheco, but I mean, you could probably move Zeus move a wide receiver for somebody like Zeus if you weren't willing to start him.
I made the mistake 2 years ago. I had Zeus and James Cook, and I traded James Cook. The guy wanted one or the other, and I picked Cook. So I oopsied on that one. And then tight end, I only have one tight end, and it's Brock Bowers. I am really high on Brock Bowers.
Mm-hmm.
I know he doesn't have the best quarterback situation, but I think Brock Bowers is going to be 100 reception kind of tight end in year one, just because he's going to be the check down guy.
Okay. Now you got to remember, Michael Myers is still there. Is Michael Myers or Mayers?
Yeah,
he's still there as well.
I dropped him. He was my starting tight end last year, and he pissed me off so bad.
Yeah, I probably would have kept him just to have that handcuff.
I'm probably about to re-pick him up because I didn't realize that I only had one tight end.
And we seen flashes last season of him making some good catches. Again, the quarterback inconsistency there kind of really spoiled, I guess what we would say, a more consistent, productive season for him. So we have our wide receivers, running back, tight ends. Where are we at next? We're at the flex position, correct?
Flex, I'm running Zeus right now, and that can change. I always use my flex spot as a matchup dependent, just because Pittman is going to consistently start, Coleman's going to consistently start, Godwin, Devontae Smith, Jacobs, Pacheco, Mondre. I pretty much just use it as, this guy is playing the worst defense in the league. Let's put him in. It's not super flex, so I can't use a quarterback, but I wish I could.
So for your flex position, week 1, who are you starting?
Right now it's Zeus, just because I don't like the Chargers offense. And by Zeus, I mean Zamir White. Sorry. I like nicknames for my players.
Well, listen, if they're tuned into this podcast, they absolutely know who Zeus is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully. But, I will try to use real names from here on out. Sorry, boys. Yeah, so I've got Zamir in my flex. I've been going back and forth between Zamir and Jameson Williams. They're both projected kind of around the same amount of points. I feel like I like Zamir's matchup against the Chargers, more than I like Jamo's against the Rams. So
I actually really like Jameson Williams.
Okay,
I was just gonna say that.
Okay,
I think I think that secondary is gonna kind of like try and lock down Pittman or
Amon-Ra.
St. Brown.
Yeah. So Jameson. Sorry, I went with Adonai Mitchell because he's got him on the bench too. You have so many players on that team. Yeah. So they're gonna try and lock down St. Brown. So that's gonna open up a lot of doors for Williams.
Okay. I like that. I just subbed that in, so we're good to go there. Hey, this is what this podcast is good for, You've got decisions. Maybe somebody out there also has that same decision with JMO versus Zamir. And, they're like, I don't know which one to start. Here you go.
And I'll be honest, I seen a clip of Jameson Williams running an insane route, and I was like, oh, it's clicking for him.
It is.
It's really clicking for him. So you could see him partner up with St. Brown for 1,000 yards. This could be a really special season for that Lions offense.
I would love that. They would have, in my opinion, they could have 3,000-yard receivers with Laporta as well.
That would be really, really special for the Lions.
Yeah, we got to talk about our hot takes, because I think that's a great I think that's a great hot take, man.
I'm here for that. And then next is everybody's favorite position, kicker. Uh, um, my starting kicker is Jake Moody. Um,
Okay.
High-powered offense in San Francisco. They're gonna score. He's gonna kick extra points. He's gonna kick field goals. That's gonna be a lot of points. Um, and then for his bye week, I have rookie kicker Will Reichard from Alabama. Love that kid's leg. He
Okay.
has won us multiple games at Alabama. He was the picture of consistency in Alabama as a kicker. Uh, it was dicey at Bama for a while at kicker, and then Will Reichard came in and just kind of set that straight. So had to show my boy some love in the 5th round of our dynasty draft.
Okay.
I mean, it's kicker. Moody could go 0 for 2 with no extra points made. Reichard could go, 6 for 6 with 12 extra points made. It's kicker's such a crapshoot unless you've got like Butker or Tucker. You know, it's just wherever we're at with that. And then the next one is actually really fun. So this is an IDP league.
Okay.
Um, I don't have a lot of defensive players on the bench. I just have one of each at each position, just because. Um, so for defensive back, I'm running with Jalen Petrie and Kyle Duggar. Petrie is one of my favorite young safeties. Dude killed it last year. And Kyle Duggar is shockingly becoming a consistent DB for us.
Yes.
I did not like him a couple of years ago. I thought he was not in the right system, but it clicked for him, and it clicked
Yeah.
hard last year.
Yeah.
And then I also, in the DB position, I have Brian Branch from Detroit, Antoine Winfield from Tampa Bay, and Minka Fitzpatrick from Pittsburgh.
So you're starting all those DBs week one.
No, I'm starting Branch, Winfield, Petrie, and Duggar.
Okay. So those are the 4 starts
Yep.
for week one.
Yep.
Now you said you have 2 linebackers you have to
I
start.
do, and my linebackers
Okay.
are Levante David and Matt Judon.
Oh. Oh, great pickups.
Judon is one of my favorite players. Unfortunately, he is
Rise
no
up.
longer. Unfortunately, he is no longer with us. But
And with us, he means with the Patriots.
no, he's dead to me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I love Judon. I hope he does nothing but give Atlanta every single tackle that y'all need. Dude is the I love red sleeves. And then I have Ivan Pace Jr. at linebacker as well on the bench, and Cole
Ooh,
Holcomb
great pick.
On the pup, and N'Kobe Dean. And
Nice.
then 2 more spots. I have defensive linemen. I have Jordan Davis for Philadelphia from that 2021 Georgia defense. He still hasn't produced well. I think he'll get there. And then Nick Bosa. If Nick Bosa can stay healthy, that's points.
How early on did you draft Bosa?
I picked him up on the free agent wire. As much as people it took people in this league a little bit to realize that those defensive positions are actually really, really good for
Value.
points, especially. I don't want to give away my secret in this league, but defensive back is broken because not only do you get tackles, you get fumbles, you get forced fumbles, you get interceptions. That's why I have so many safeties and DBs, and all of my DBs are safeties because of the fact that you
They
could
can
have
rotate
a
it in.
lock
Yeah.
exactly, and you could have a lockdown corner like Sauce Gardner, and nobody's going to throw the ball his way, so he's not going to get
Right.
points. There's no
Yeah.
point in corners.
Yeah.
So I just got the hard hitting safeties that are also good at interceptions. Defense does me well.
Strategy.
That's good. That's good. And
Yeah.
not only is that a great strategy, like Zach said, Again, I said it off air. I'm in the belief that at some point fantasy should be catching up to individual defensive players being as valuable as offensive players. We love the totality of the game of football. So maybe it'll get there one day. Maybe it won't. If it doesn't, remember you can still set your league to individual defensive players. And I love that Ivan Pace Jr. pick just because he's a very versatile linebacker. He's a linebacker, but he kind of plays like a safety.
He sure
He gets
does.
great interceptions. He moves around sideline to sideline well. That's a very great sleeper pick. Ivan Pace Jr. Is a good linebacker in that Minnesota offense. So that was Eric's stardom for week 1. Okay. Zach, you want to go ahead and read off your roster?
Sure,
And
yeah.
we get your starters for week 1.
Absolutely, man. So this is my essentially my big money league. This is done
Okay.
through. Unfortunately, this is done through NFL and not sleeper.
Okay.
But that's something I'm trying to get them away from. But so what we're looking at for quarterback is I was able to go ahead and pick up Stroud, and then on my bench I got T-Law. I think that that's going to be a good little replacement. I guess I just love the AFC South a little too much for whatever reason when it comes to
AFC
fantasy
South,
football.
too.
Yeah, man. And then for running back, man, I went with the hero strategy at running back. I went ahead and picked up Jahmyr Gibbs, and then I didn't pick up like my second running back until like real late in the draft, probably like round 9. I think is when I got my next running back, and I was able to snag Javonte Williams, who I think is going to have a really really good year in Denver. I think Bo Nix is going to be, I don't want to say heavily dependent, but he's definitely going to be dependent upon handing the ball off, checking it down. And I think Javonte Williams has already proven in preseason that he's got that connection with Bo. And so I was really happy to get him that late, considering the strategy that I went with. I also picked up Gus Edwards. I picked up Damian Pierce. I think Damian Pierce is just a solid handcuff for Joe Mixon in case something happens with Joe. I think the change of pace that they're looking for, they're going to use Damian Pierce more than they did last year with Singletary. So I think that was a pretty good late round flyer for me. Those are the only running backs I have on that team, though. So that's a little worrisome.
Now, I will say this. Your starter is fantastic. Damian Pierce. We have to talk about it. His rookie season, he had an incredible rookie season. He had a drop-off. I thought he was going to come along with Singletary there. I thought Singletary was just there to kind of be complimentary to Pierce. That wasn't really the case. Then there was a point in the season where I think Pierce had 2 kick returns. And I was like, okay, here it is. But it never happened. So we're going to keep our eyes on Damian Pierce all season long. And we will constantly be talking with Zach on that and seeing if he can crack Zach's rotation for the year as far as starting.
Yeah, man, 100%. I loaded up at receiver.
Okay.
I was able to get Amon-Ra St. Brown. I was able to get Jalen Waddle.
Ooh.
I was able to get Nico Collins.
Ooh.
Oh.
On my bench, I got Adonai Mitchell.
Ooh.
Wow.
I got Xavier Worthy.
Bro.
Oh.
I loaded up at wide receiver for this PPR league.
This is a 10-man league?
This is a 12-man league.
I was gonna say it sounds like
Wow.
an 8-man league with
I was gonna
those
say you were able to say.
receivers.
Okay. So listen, Zach. Listen, I'm high on the rookies too.
Yeah.
Tell me, did people fall asleep at the wheel here with that one? You picked up some explosive names at wide receiver. Just let us know how that happened. Talk to the internet. How'd that happen?
So I feel like you can definitely tell nowadays who's putting in time and effort during the off season when it comes to research and focus and what your draft strategies are going to be. I was able to implement so many different draft strategies because I'm in so many different leagues. And this was the first time that I got a late round pick. I ended up getting 10 out of 12, right? And so I told myself I drafted from the second pick 5 times this year. It was awful, right? Because I kind of just ended up towards the end, like in a couple of leagues, just being like, okay, I know what I can get here. I'm not going to reach. I'm not going to try anything new. I'm just going to go ahead and get who I know I can get because I've done this, right? So this was really fun for me to be able to sit at 10 out of 12. A couple people just weren't. You could tell that they weren't strategizing. You could tell that they weren't really. They were just going next best, right? So I was able to go down, like literally, guys. I got Jalen Waddle in the 6th round. People just were drafting. People were drafting who they love. You know what I mean? Instead of building a team that's going to win, this is $1,000 buy-in. It's winner take all, and we got guys drafting Josh Allen in the 1st round.
What are you doing? Can I get in on that?
So only if I can get it on your 27-man starting league.
52.
Only if I can get
We
on
have a
it.
full
Okay,
roster.
sorry. Full roster. So yeah, man, I got really, really excited when I saw a couple of things. Like I said, I am kind of hurting in the running back position, but I'm so loaded at wide receiver. I could trade one of my bench receivers for a starting running back. So
yeah.
I'm super stoked on that. I think that wide receiver room is probably some of the most depth that I've ever had at wide receiver. So I'm stoked.
That's crazy.
I was also able to get Mark Andrews. So that's my starting tight end for the year. I pray to the fantasy gods that this man can stay healthy this year. But just in case, I went ahead and picked up Isaiah Likely.
Yep.
As one of my last pickups for this draft. It's so important to have handcuffs in positions that you know are prone to injury, or players that are prone to injury. It's super important to go ahead and snag a handcuff if you can. And then kicker, I got my boy Young Hoku.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I like snagging handcuffs from other people. Just like with you with Mark Andrews, I would love to get Isaiah Likely so that when Andrews goes down, somebody's like,
I'm trading you.
Yeah. And then I can get a position of value or a draft pick for it, and I love it.
Yeah, that's a great strategy, and I've done that in a couple of leagues this year. I got a whole bench full of 1Bs and 2As, and I love it. I love it.
Gotta love it.
So yeah, kicker, I went with Young Hoku, and then I picked up the Cowboys defense. Normally, I stream defenses. I think that's been a strategy of mine for years. Is I've never wasted.
My favorite.
Yeah, I've never really liked wasting a draft pick on a defense when I could just, because I pay attention to matchups, and I know like a lot of people are just like, oh, I'll set my lineup once a week, but I'm focused on the waiver. I'm heavy on matchup bases and like who's playing who, and yeah, this defense could be awful. That's why they're sitting on the waiver wire. But when they're playing Carolina, that's 3 picks. You know what I mean? Like that's guaranteed pick 6. You know, so it's just like okay, cool. But I went ahead because of how stacked they are, and it might be one of the last years that they are if they don't pay Parsons. And so I was like, you know what? I'll go ahead and pick up the Cowboys.
Okay.
Yeah, they got a lot of defensive players coming up too. Because if I'm not mistaken, I think Trayvon is due in a year or two.
He
just got.
Oh, did he lock in?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So they paid
they
Trayvon Diggs before they paid Dak. Okay, never mind.
They're not going to pay Dak.
Now,
it's the wrong podcast for that.
They're definitely moving on from Dak. I think if I'm not mistaken, Deron Bland might be due.
Well, he's out.
Okay.
He's out for the year, so we'll find out, right?
Yeah.
If he can't bounce back from this injury, they're not going to pay him.
Yeah, I think that Dallas is going to move away from Dak. We have a lot of quarterbacks coming out of college football. I would not be surprised if Dallas made a move for Shedeur Sanders. Jerry Jones has a great rapport with Shedeur Dad. It's an ideal situation for the Sanders family. It's an ideal situation for the Jones family. But we're going to get to that in the triple coverage all season because I love draft time and I love draft speculation as it pertains to fantasy. So we are going to talk about that at some point in time. So I'm going to go ahead, and this is my big money league as well for fantasy. So I'm going to read off my roster, and I'm going to read off my starters for week 1. I'm super excited because we get an awesome matchup. We get a return On the AFC Championship, we have the Chiefs versus the Ravens. So at quarterback, in this league, I had the number 7 pick. With the number 7 pick, of course, I went with Bijan Robinson. I was ecstatic that he fell to me. You guys heard me last pod. He's my number 1 fantasy football running back, and I think he's going to end up as the number 1 fantasy football player. At quarterback, I was able to make 3 sensational picks. First off, I have Patrick Mahomes at quarterback.
Ooh.
My backup, I have Kirk Cousins.
Ooh.
And I also was able to snag Matthew Stafford super late, maybe 14th round. Now, I'll be honest, this is through Yahoo, so my draft grade wasn't good because, I got to keep it real with you guys. There was no fucking way I could let Mahomes slip down. I feel like he's going to have a phenomenal season and a lot of weapons. I went Mahomes early, around earlier than I should have got him, but I'm totally fine with that once you guys hear the rest of my roster. So my starting quarterback for week 1, I'm going with Mahomes against Baltimore. There is no Hollywood Brown, but I still believe in Xavier Worthy. I still believe in Travis Kelce. Juju Smith-Schuster is back on the roster.
No.
Now listen.
No. Don't let him fool you, Brad. Don't let him fool you.
Listen.
He does it
listen
every
to me.
time. It's the TikTok.
Don't let him fool you.
Listen. In Kansas City, he was highly successful. He's not dependent upon like he was in New England. There's no inconsistency in quarterback. Do I think he's going to be the best? No, but I think he will be serviceable in an upgrade from Kadarius Toney. I'm not sure he's going to be dropping wide open passes that hit his hand. That's just
Don't
me.
let him fool you, Brad. We saw him last year.
And as you say, Eric, I'm a homer. So fight on to Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, at wide receiver, my wide receivers are Devontae Adams, Xavier Worthy, Keon Coleman. I picked up Datavion Wicks from Green Bay after free agency. And my last wide receiver is Brandon Ayuk, but I actually did a swap. I did a trade before the season even started. I traded Ayuk for Chris Olave, head-to-head straight up. I like Olave. He has a 75-80 split on coverage success ratio, 75% in man, 80% in zone coverage. Michael Thomas is out for, I think, week 1, if I'm not mistaken.
Multiple weeks.
Yeah.
Multiple weeks.
Yeah.
So he's out for multiple weeks. So I felt very, very comfortable with that trade there. I know Ayuk just got a lot of money, so he's going to start getting wide receiver 1 type of targets. But I felt very, very comfortable with getting Olave. The deal actually doesn't process through until tomorrow. So I'll have Devontae Adams and Olave as my 2 starting wide receivers.
Pause real
Love that.
quick. Actually, I forgot. Michael Thomas is a free agent, so Olave is the one on that squad.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, they didn't
Well, he
resign
was-
Michael Thomas.
He was always going to be the one,
Yeah,
even with Michael Thomas
absolutely.
there. But Michael Thomas
Absolutely.
is He is suspended. I think New Orleans was in talks with re-signing him because he was a free agent for so long. But and then he got suspended, so they probably just left
Gotcha.
him
Okay.
on the waivers.
I don't blame him.
So we don't even have to worry about Michael Thomas.
Nope.
All right. So at running back, here's my running back room. Okay. Normally, I'm in a PPR league and I don't go running back heavy, but this year I did go running back heavy just because I wanted some depth for in case there was an injury or if I have some good trade bait. My running back room is as follows: Bijan Robinson. I have Rashad White, Tampa Bay.
Okay.
On the bench, I have Tony Pollard, who's going to be splitting carries. I have Zach Moss, who's going to be splitting carries as well. And I went ahead and I took a pick late in the draft, and I put Nick Chubb on my IR. I think if he can come back in that back end of the season, in those last few weeks of the playoffs, I do believe Nick Chubb comes back and he has a great remainder of the season. I don't know what his future is going to hold as far as running back in Cleveland or running back in the NFL for that matter. But with me, I just feel like he's really going to bounce back. I've seen some off-season workouts, and he looks like he's ready. Hopefully those knees hold up. But my starting running backs are going to be Rashad White, and they're going to be Bijan Robinson. Now, at tight end, I was able to get two great tight ends. I got George Kittle here, and I also got Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
I was high on both. I did want to do the stack with Kelsey and Mahomes. I was unable to. One of the guys told me, he said, listen, man, I really didn't want to draft Kelsey, but he said, I really didn't want you to have that stack. So somebody else has Kelsey. He will not trade him to me. So that was a good strategy in a sense, taking away a stack from me with Kelsey. I do still have Xavier Worthy. So with Hollywood Brown out, we're going to see if Xavier Worthy just takes off with those targets long term. At kicker, I have Evan McPherson, Cincinnati. He's projected to do some big points, and they are going up against New England. They're going to score. I feel like our defense is going to be able to hold them to some field goals. So he may get the projected 8 points. At defense, I went with the Detroit Lions. Now, I may pick up another defense just because they're going against the Rams here. And the secondary for Detroit is phenomenal. They have Terrion Arnold, they have Rake Shaw, they have Brian Branch, as you stated. I think they have Carlton Davis now from Tampa Bay as well. They have a very good secondary, but that Rams offense is very good as well. So that matchup may get swapped out. I don't have an alternate defense. So do you guys have some recommendations on maybe a defense I should think about swapping Detroit out with for week one?
I personally don't hate that matchup for week one. It's coming off of Stafford's injury, coming off of Cooper being injured. So, I mean, I don't hate it. They're going to have to get back into a rhythm. I don't think that's a bad start. I guess it just depends on who's on your waiver wire to see if there's like a better matchup. But I don't hate it.
Okay, so what I'll do is, Zach, I'll get your opinion, and then I'll tell you who's on the waiver wire.
Not to sound biased or anything, but I kind of love Atlanta's defensive matchup against Pittsburgh, against a Russell Wilson team that doesn't really have anybody other than George Pickens? ? I kind of love that. I think that we beefed up enough to kind of make ourselves relevant on the defensive front. And so I would absolutely start Atlanta.
Najee.
All right. And coincidence, you said that. So let me read off some of the top defenses we have on the wire. We have Cincinnati versus New England. We have a Seattle defense versus Denver. Tampa Bay versus Washington. New Orleans versus Carolina. Los Angeles Chargers, I almost said Clippers, versus the Las Vegas Raiders. We have the Atlanta defense versus Pittsburgh. We have Miami defense versus Jacksonville, and Minnesota defense versus the Giants.
There's a couple out there that I like. I like the New Orleans and Carolina.
100%.
I do like the Atlanta matchup, just because I don't think Steeler Nation's ready to ride yet, especially with Russ as quarterback. And I do like that Miami matchup a little bit. I'm curious to see how T-Law is going to do with his new weapons. It could take him a couple weeks to get on the same page. I like the other two matchups a little better though.
Okay.
I would say
so what we're going to do.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that I will say to you and to listeners who are streaming, stay away from, as sexy as it is, the Seattle and Denver matchup, because I think Denver is a sneaky pick to actually win that game. I think it's because of their offense. I think it'll end up being a shootout between Bo Nix and Bridgewater, not Bridgewater. Sorry, I said Teddy Bridgewater. My God, Geno Smith.
Geno Smith. Yeah.
But stay as far away from that matchup as possible.
Okay. So what we're gonna do is down below, if you guys are watching, let me know before Sunday who should I possibly start? Should I stick with Detroit or should I go with some of the mentioned defenses we have on the waiver wire? I will be looking at all comments and taking them into consideration. And lastly, we have one individual defensive player, which I have TJ Watt. I think he's going to have an explosive first game. He's going to be all across the field tackling. They're going against Atlanta. While I think Atlanta wins the matchup, uh, I just have him everywhere across the field. Bijan's going to be running heavy. You have Kyle Pitts, different things of that nature. And like you, Zach, I kind of just streamline defenses and individual defensive players. Actually, my kickers, defense, and individual defensive players, I always rotate out. What I look for is that Monday night matchup. I always look for that Monday night matchup for those extra points. I could be down 5 points. I could be down 6 points. That back half of my roster, that kicker, that defense, that individual defensive player, I have no problem sacrificing and swapping out for a great Monday night matchup.
That's
So
so
that's
smart.
typically one of my key draft strategies. I'll be honest. I'm very, very satisfied with my roster. I will say this league has done a bunch of great drafting that I'm in this year. I am the reigning champion currently. I am the pot holder. I have the big ring. But this year, the guys stepped their game up. They got it's a lot of teams with a lot of great stacks. Some guys got some great running back duos. I think it's finally clicking for everybody this season. It's going to be an ultra competitive league. I set week 1 as rivalry week, so we're going to have some explosive matchups in that league as well for week 1. And of course, we make side bets, right? What is a fantasy league without a fucking side bet, right? So we got $25 per matchup, so we make a lot of side bets. My goal is always to make my buy-in money by winning uh, through side bets or losing. It just depends. I give you guys a quick story. Of course, I proclaim Patrick Mahomes as the GOAT. I have a diehard Lions fan on a couple of them actually on in the league. And last year, everybody's like, "Hey, $50 the Lions beat the Chiefs," and I'm like, "Oh, I'll take that. That's house money." Turns out the Lions did beat the Chiefs. So, I'm helping guys pay their dues back or essentially play for free. So it's a very great dynamic league. We have a lot of fun in the chat. We talk so much crap. Full season, it never stops, and it will never stop with us here either at the Triple Coverage Fantasy Pod. Now, Zach brought something to my attention. We have some Thursday and Friday games, so I'm going to kick it to Zach. We want to do some pick'ems, and we want to do who we think is going to have the greatest fantasy impact. So go ahead, Zach.
It's a Thursday night, man. I'm so stoked for this matchup. I think it's incredible that we got this as the first game of the season, considering it could be, we're going to see it again in the AFC Championship. I love it. I do think Baltimore takes the win, and I do think it comes down to receiver and receiver. I see for Kansas City, Xavier Worthy having his breakout moment, his explosive game. He's going to lock down, in my opinion, that wide receiver 2 role. There's going to be zero question on it. It should be him. Rashee Rice is always going to remain that wide receiver 1 as long as he's there. Of course, Kelsey's always going to get those targets from Pat. But I think this is the moment. Big primetime game, season opener. Xavier Worthy shows us why he got drafted in the first round by Kansas City. For Baltimore, I think if you got Zay Flowers on your roster, you did a good job, and I think it's going to pay off for you in dividends immediately. I think Zay Flowers is going to have a fantastic game. I think his connection with Lamar has only been bolstered throughout the offseason. I think with the addition of Derrick Henry, it kind of opens up that Y receiver. And I think that Zay Flowers is going to have an outstanding game and an outstanding season. Friday, we're headed to Brazil, right? So that's, as dangerous as it is. I do think Philly ekes out the win in Brazil. I think in terms of fantasy, I think this one comes down to running backs. Saquon, I think, is going to have an outstanding game. I think we're going to see what their plan is for him moving forward offensively to see how his usage works out. Either where they're going to line him up. Is he going to be purely backfield? They just got rid of Boston Scott, so like they're not really concerned with the running back considering they got Saquon. So I love that. I think they're going to use him a lot and kind of bring him back to fantasy relevance for a lot of people. And then on the other side of that is Josh Jacobs, right? AJ Dillon just out for the season with his neck injury. I think they have a rookie behind Josh Jacobs, so I think they're about to put Green Bay on Jacobs' back, and I think that that trio of wide receivers is going to help kind of alleviate some running lanes, and I think that Josh Jacobs is going to have an outstanding game. Those are the 4 people that I would probably must start in those 2 games.
Okay. All right. Eric, what about you? What are you thinking for the week 1 matchups Thursday and Friday?
Man, I got to roll with the Chiefs on Thursday. I just think that they are gonna. I think it's gonna come down to a field goal kick, regardless of who it is. But I think Kansas City has the ball last. Kansas City does a Patrick Mahomes special, drives down the field, lets Butker kick the field goal, wins the game. But I'm kind of right there with you, Zach. I think my 2 must starts are going to be Zay Flowers and Xavier Worthy. I do think Worthy is going to absolutely establish himself as a name in this league in week 1. And I do like Zay Flowers on the opposite side just because you got to have a wide receiver 1 somewhere in Baltimore, and he proved last year he could do it. So I think it's going to come down to just a field goal, but I got Kansas City in that game. Eagles and Packers in Brazil, I think the Eagles run away with this game. I don't think that Green Bay is going to be as good as advertised, but you already know I don't like Jordan Love. So in terms of must starts in Philadelphia, I have Devontae Smith. I do think that it is going to be Devontae's game to, I don't want to say break out because we already know what he is. He's a former Heisman winning wide receiver, very high pick, very good receiver. But I think it's time for him to establish that, hey, I'm right there on par with A.J. Brown. And I think this is going to be his coming out season. On the opposite side in Green Bay, I do like the Josh Jacobs pick, but it's so hard for me on this roster because you have wide receiver 1, wide receiver 1A, wide receiver 1B, wide receiver 1C. They're all the same player. And it's just, I think it's going to be a week-to-week basis on which one busts out. I think I've got Romeo Doubs doing it this week. I like Jacobs, but I think that they're going to let Jordan Love show why they paid him so much freaking money. And they're going to throw a lot, especially on a Eagles defense that may not be as good on the back end. Even with Darius Slay and Gardner Johnson and Ringo. I don't know. That one's tough for me just because Green Bay's roster, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Okay. Well, listen. Let me go ahead and give my picks. All right. I'm going to go with Kansas City here. I'm thinking the Chiefs and the Ravens is going to be an explosive matchup. Typically, Kansas City starts slow week 1, but I've seen Mahomes and Kelsey out there in the preseason early, making certain connections. I've seen Xavier Worthy be so explosive in the preseason. I think the Chiefs start a little different this year. I know it's like ring night or ceremony night, so I got the Chiefs here. If I have players that we want to go ahead and take a look at as far as starting, you got to go Patrick Mahomes if you're starting, or if you have him on your roster for QB. And also, yes, Zay Flowers. You got to remember, Kansas City got rid of Snead. This is going to be either Trent McDuffie's going to be on that island by himself, or he's still going to be on the inside as the nickel. doing what he does best. So it's going to be intriguing to see exactly what Kansas City defense can cook up to stop those weapons that Lamar Jackson has. Now, I will say this. Another starter we should be looking to make sure we start is Derrick Henry. And at a heavy dose, we're going to get Derrick Henry. Remember, Baltimore only lost the AFC Championship because they stopped running the ball for some reason. They just stopped running. And I think Baltimore is going to give us a heavy dose of Derrick Henry and Zay Flowers on Thursday. And I think for the Chiefs, you got to start Patrick Mahomes. He could start the season red hot. 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. He could totally cover getting 30-plus points or more for fantasy football. As far as Eagles and the Packers, I'm going to go to Packers here, and I'm going to tell you why. We're forgetting about the Packers defense. The Packers has a sneaky good defense. They have a secondary in place. They have a great defensive front. If they finally lock it down and come all together, then we'll see. Here's my concern, though. Saquon and that Philadelphia offense. This is going to be so explosive. I don't see how you don't start Saquon here. And I'm with Eric, your sleeper. I know Eric loves Devontae Smith. He's a homer, but I really think Devontae Smith here is the better start over A.J. Brown. I do think A.J. Brown is going to make an impact on the game, but I just think Devontae Smith is going to have the better mismatch, the better opportunity to make more plays and get inside of the end zone. I think Green Bay offense put people on notice. We don't know who's going to be wide receiver one, who's going to establish themselves, and that's perfectly fine. Long as we're getting in the end zone and we are getting 6. I think Green Bay sneaks it out here. I think they stun Philly. I don't think Philly has a bad game at all. I just think Green Bay stuns them. I think defense comes through. And Jordan Love, he has the people talking the next morning like, is he worth the $50 million? So those are our picks. Before we close out and get ready for an amazing day of college football, you guys got anything else? Eric, you want to give them the socials?
Yeah, we do have a Twitter. It's or X. I'm sorry. It's at 3 Coverage Pod. We've got a little bit of a following so far. It's teeny tiny, but we're getting interactions, so I'm good with that. But feel free to hop on the X machine and talk with us. You know, we've got people already commenting about episode 1 and how the quarterbacks ranks they disagreed with, and hey, you know what? That's what's so good about fantasy. We can all like talk and tell us how it is. And also, I think I would be remiss to not mention get well soon to Ricky Pearsall. That is such a terrible thing to see last night during a good day of college football. Terrible situation. So hopefully Ricky gets well soon and comes out and just balls out in San Fran. This happened 2 years ago with B-Rob too. Like he got carjacked and got shot, and he was back in like 3 weeks. So got thoughts and prayers out to Ricky. But yeah, give us a follow at 3 Coverage Pod. We'd love to have a conversation with you.
Most definitely. Zach, you got something for us before we sign off here?
Man, we're in it now. Everything that we've been wanting to happen for weeks and weeks and weeks is finally upon us. It is time to rejoice. It is football season. Yesterday was a great day of college ball. It really just kind of brought back a lot of great feelings. You know, fall is right here. Football season is here. So y'all enjoy it, man. You know, we love having you here, and we love that you guys are listening to us and taking us at our word, and we appreciate the views and the comments, and we'd love to continue to interact with you guys. Let us know down below today who your team is, man. Let's talk about it. How excited you are for the season, and how prepared you guys were for fantasy, and you know, thank you guys.
All right, most definitely. And I want to say, fight on to my USC Trojans. We are facing the LSU Tigers today. Of course, I'm going to go with USC. I think we're going to hang up 50 points today. Now, listen, I could come back with egg on my face next week, but guess what? We don't care because that's football. You know, it happens. Again, we want to send a special shout out prayers and a speedy recovery to Ricky Paracel. Unfortunate shooting, but he will recover. So it's just tragic situation. On a high note, college football kicked back off. It was great to have college game day on all day yesterday morning. I typically eat clean, but I went ahead and got me some Chick-fil-A yesterday and enjoyed college football. And again, we are powered by the Suplex Dinner Club. So make sure you like, share, and subscribe the Triple Coverage Podcast. We are going to be here all season, even in the off season. We're going to be just talking football, how it relates to fantasy. So we're going to be here. Again, like, share, subscribe. A 3 Coverage Podcast. Hit us on X and let us know. Hey, you guys sound crazy. You guys sound amazing. Look, we're taking all feedback. We don't take nothing personal. We know. We get it. We're your fans. We're in it. So we understand. But with that being said, we're going to sign off. Triple Coverage Fantasy Pod. By the time you guys watch this, the NFL will be kicking off. So enjoy your week 1 starters. And we're out. Peace.